Hey, welcome to the show. You are listening to the Roosic podcast. We are a roots music podcast based out of Nashville, Tennessee, where we talk to the local music scene and beyond.
Today we have Mose Wilson. He is a country songwriter, killer guitar player, as well as a producer.
Subscribe to the channel. Check it out.
All right.
Brian, I love you, buddy.
We're officially rolling.
Are we now? This is hilarious. So we never have done this before. So one of the things that we found when we started doing this, right, is it's so fucking awkward to like sit down, put headphones on, put a microphone in front of someone, and then say, "Okay, now we're rolling. Talk." It's the worst thing in the world.
I just did it. Sorry.
Exactly. So what we started doing, which was just the only way we could think to get through these things, was we would just start doing it without telling the guests, like, "Oh, we're rolling."
Get the conversation
just
going.
keep going. And it makes a world. I'm sure.
So we're done. We're hit the end. Okay,
we're done.
Cool.
Yeah. But like, I'm sure part of it is just dependent on the personality that you're hanging out with. You know, some people, there's lights and cameras and stuff. Some people can get a little bit, just be a little distracted by it, and other people can just not even really pay attention to it. But that was the only way we could think to do it, is just like ease into. So I think this is the most hard line, like, hey, we're starting, we've ever done, and I don't like this. I'm not a fan of this.
Okay. Well, I apologize.
Brian, you're already fucking this up, dude.
I got stoned before it came in, so it don't matter. Like,
Yeah, I mean, this one a little different than normal.
Yeah, we're gonna get off the rails. I can already feel it. Yeah, I don't even remember what the hell we were talking about. Everything looks fucking great though. Good job, guys. Good job. Alexa, you're killing this today.
We're trying to upgrade the lighting and shit, so if we look more beautiful than usual, that's because...
Brian, you can never look more beautiful than usual. I want you to know that. Wait, so the new record is in the can right now. It's pretty much done, right? What else is there to do at this point?
I sent the final mixing notes to the engineer on the way here.
Oh, that's exciting.
I was texting and driving. But
don't do that.
Yeah, I know I shouldn't, but it's gonna kill me one day. But
it was for the music, damn it.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, so then we're looking at a couple of different mastering people, but I think hopefully May or June it'll be out.
Nice. And you still need to pick singles and stuff, right? So
still looking at singles. Still need to get a title for the album.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. What? Because I'm trying to think. So the EP, or was it an EP or an album? It was an album, right?
The first record.
Yeah, the first record. Yeah. That came out
21,
right? So it's in my head that came out like 6 months ago.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. But that's wild. Yeah, it had to be 2021, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. It was the end of that year, right? I think it came out at the end of the year, something like that.
It came out in November.
November. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a great record. But yeah, that's got to be. It's been a minute. Like, does it feel like it's been a minute? Because my last full length came out in 2020, but to me, that feels like simultaneously a lifetime ago and like I just did it. So what's it feel like for you?
It doesn't feel that long.
You've been busy though. You've been really busy.
And I think that's helped. That I've done a lot since then, but stayed so busy I haven't had time to think about it until really last night. I got these mixes kind of to where I was happy with them, and I wanted to hear the new record against the old record. And it's the first time I had done that, and I actually like almost got like song to song, like what version of the song on the new record I felt like was its distant cousin on the old record, and would listen to him back to back, and I was really happy with how I felt like things had grown since learning about that album, and that was technically the first album I really got to fully produce as well, and I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was just making the album, and then I got told later that I was the producer.
Yeah,
because I thought the engineer was the producer.
Yeah, no, that's the way it's always been with mine. I've never had any producer.
You're producing?
Yeah. What do you listen back? I've never asked anyone this. Do you listen back to your old stuff at all?
From time to time for something like this, just to see like what's going on with myself as an artist, and it's hard to like critique yourself in that way.
Yeah, I find it's almost impossible. It's adjacent to impossible to do that.
Sometimes I think it's nice because when you're constantly practicing and trying to get better, you don't always see the progression when you're doing it every single day. So sometimes I find it really nice to go back and listen to how I used to sound, and then then when you see that big jump, then you're like, oh, okay, I actually have gotten like a lot better.
I almost feel I get the opposite out of it. I feel I'm very critical of where I'm at and where I've been, and when I look back on it, I feel I'm always surprised of, oh, this is better than I thought it was. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's sort of like
the old
because the old thing's better. Because I'm so hypercritical of myself and wanting to move forward and always wanting to get to the next, not wanting to get to the next thing, but always wanting to be present, which is just inevitably going to push you into the future. And when I listen to stuff from the past, I'm always surprised that, oh yeah, no, like I did this for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which,
well, maybe both of those things are good.
yeah, you probably do.
Maybe
need balance.
you're like respecting your old self, even though you're constantly trying to get away from your old self. Like you're always wanting to grow and be better than what you were. But maybe you can hear the integrity that you had to begin with. And because I don't dislike my old record, it actually made me happy about my old record. And I was like, ooh, this is not as good as what I just did, but it's trying to be. Yeah. And that's important.
Or I always think it's not even that it's, because again, to me, it's like comparing apples to oranges. Like I asked that because relatively recently, like probably in the last 4 or 5 months, I listened back to my last record, which I hadn't heard in probably years, honestly. And I thought, oh, I really love this. Like I enjoy this, but it was like, I can't contrast that to me now because it's not me now. So it's almost like, it's like listening to a different person's record, if that makes sense. It's like listening to whomever, and just, it doesn't even, I don't even register that it's me. It's just like, oh, this is something I like. I would listen to this. You know what I mean? It was an interesting experience, just only because I don't really listen to myself in that. Obviously, whenever you're going through the process of making something, you're just constantly, it's that just never-ending feedback loop of listening to yourself over and over and trying to get the mixes right and trying to get the sequence of the tracks right and all that stuff.
In general, though, I hate listening to myself. Like,
yeah,
I normally don't. Like, lately, what my focus has been, like, the videos I'm putting on YouTube of me playing, like, the solo jazz stuff. And, like, after I put out a video, like, I never hear that shit again. Like, I don't know why.
That's kind of the way. I think that's the way
not
to
for
be,
you.
though.
It's for everybody
I'm sure
else.
one day I'll go back and, like, listen to all of them and shit. But, like, I don't know. I don't like hearing myself, which I feel like isn't good because, like, a lot of people say, like, you should record yourself and listen to it all the time.
Yeah.
I should probably do that, but I don't.
Yeah, I like it sounds self-indulgent. I mean, I like what I do, or I wouldn't do it, but at the same time, I'm always conscious of the fact that I want to be in the present. I don't want to be looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
So it's this weird thing where I think you're so into whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a project like an album or even just writing a new batch of songs or what have you. I like writing because I like my songs, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're as present as you can be with whatever it is that you're making. It is this weird kind of catch-22 in my own head, and maybe it's just the wrong way to look at things, but
yeah, I think we're all musicians here, and I think real musicians like to live in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't want to live in the past and hear what we did back then. We want to do something right now.
Yeah,
we want to jam now. And I don't think everybody is that way, so we make recordings for people to listen to things that we did in that moment. But I think what we really get satisfaction of is, like, being in the moment and playing with other players that we enjoy playing with and making something cool. Because my favorite process of the album is never listening to it at the end. It's always making it. It's always being in the studio and playing with great players and having that moment, that experience, and you always learn something. It's always I mean, it should be. I mean, I've had some experiences in the studio that, not my own record, but, just doing other things that I didn't enjoy as much, and you remember that too. But I think if you're, for your own artistry and something that's your own work, you're the happiest when you're making it, not when you're reviewing it.
Totally.
Yeah, I think you fall in love with the process, or at least for myself, and I think...
Can y'all hear me? Am I talking to you?
You're good, you're good. I do think, too, for myself, and also just talking to other people who do a similar thing to myself, you fall in love with the process more than you fall in love with the product. So don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of the stuff that I've made in my life, but that's not why I love doing this. I love doing this because I love the process of
the
making
work is the
those
best
things.
part,
Exactly.
man. When you find
Totally.
something you love to work hard at, is so good.
It's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
man.
And like I was actually, seems like a bit of a side tangent, but so one of the classes that I'm a middle school music teacher. One of the classes I teach is music technology, and just by weird happenstance, this past week I was talking to some of the kids about just the process of recording technology. I mean, it's only been around. Gramophone came out 1877. Like, it's crazy. This is 2 human beings ago that we didn't have recorded sound for all of human history.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that is wild to think about.
Until
Other than
2
that,
human
humans
lifespans
made
ago.
it.
Exactly.
Right then.
And to me, it's funny because as I was thinking about this, one of the things that crossed my mind is the music that I love in my life. Really, one of the musics that I love in my life more than just about anything is traditional music. I mean, that's what I have really. That and songwriting are kind of the things I've devoted my life to. And one of the reasons I think I love that music so much is because it comes out of that process. It comes out of the process of, again, until 5 seconds ago, we just didn't have the ability to take a snapshot of sound and listen back to it. So music had to inevitably be in the moment. And that is the music you get out of that process.
Yeah.
And I mean, more so than, obviously we've had written music for hundreds of years, several hundred years. And so we've had things such as, this is sort of a large box to throw things in, but such as classical music, right? Where you have music dictated down. And don't get me wrong, I love that music, and there are days where that's all I'm going to listen to. But that's not the thing that I love. And what I love is the
It's
other
impressive,
music, the stuff.
though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very impressive music,
unbelievable.
but it doesn't always move you the same way that, like...
Yeah, it can, but I just, for myself, most of the time, the music that truly, truly affects me is the music that has come out of that oral tradition of somebody playing something for someone, and then the process over time of how people remember those songs and put their own, get their hands on it and make it their own thing. I love that. I just think it's such a beautiful, beautiful process.
Yeah, I love traditional music too, and I think they go hand in hand. Traditional and the songwriter thing is, songwriters write words. Sometimes they're musicians, sometimes not, but you can always figure out a way to apply a songwriter's story to a traditional sense of music, and really give it its thing, and make it remember. I think Tom T. Hall was a master of that.
Absolutely.
Like, that's how I got to Memphis, or man, there's been a tune lately I've been listening. It's called Mama Bake a Pie, Daddy Kill a Chicken.
I don't know that one.
And it's dark. It's about a Vietnam vet that is coming back from the war, not able to walk. And it's such a great song to listen to. It's enjoyable to listen to, but it's really heavy when you pay attention to it. And I kind of think he tied it all in together. He's telling us a folk story of something that's going on in his time. At the same time, it's a totally digestible country song. And I've heard like 4 or 5 people cover it, and each cover is so cool and unique on its own, and it's always good. And I'm not usually a huge fan of war songs, but that
I'm
one
not
was
either,
like,
but some of them can really, when you stick the landing, you stick the landing. It's to me, it's
Tom
the same.
can do it.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah.
I feel the exact same way about there's certain styles of film, like certain genres of film, like war films, or there's certain types of films that I'm not partial to, but then someone can pull it off.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I think of traditional music, one of the reasons I love that style of music is because the process is just this never-ending refining. There's this refinement that just continues to happen over time, where if I play a song to Brian, he's not going to remember the bad shit, right? It's this natural process of weeding out the stuff that's not worth remembering. And for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, really, that's why we have these songs. It's such a beautiful thing. And
that is I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, there are no bad traditional songs because no one's going to bother
because they wouldn't have been a tradition.
Exactly. And it's not like
it's
there
a
are other styles. Exactly.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
and there are more contemporary versions of that where that's not the case. Or there's also things like, again, once music is dictated down, once you do have pen to paper, that's not to shit on something like certain classical pieces. But something like that, you can remember that once it's dictated down, you can remember that regardless of the quality of the thing. And maybe you remember it because maybe you are moved to play that because it's such a technical piece of music, right? But it's different. It's different than remembering something for the sake of remembering something.
I kind of think jazz is classical music in tradition.
I agree.
Like I kind of think that,
it's kind of like the classical music of America, basically.
Yeah, in a better way, because it is traditional. Jazz players play the same tunes, but never play them the exact same way. And expand on them, so it becomes traditional.
That's why I love that. But
it's got the depth and the theory of the greatest classical composers to ever exist.
Totally.
So,
yeah, well, I think that's how jazz started. It was basically like the European classical composers getting a hold of like the traditional American like blues and folk music, and then combining that kind of created jazz.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw a thing of Wynton Marsalis saying that it was slaves that had to teach slave owners' children how to play classical pieces. That was a big began
part of
to figure out the classical theory and knowledge and apply it to blues and Afro-Cuban rhythms. And that kind of helped that. From. And then even Wynton, I think one time said that classical sounds like it's laughing at jazz. I mean, opposite of that. Jazz sounds like it's laughing at classical music. Like sometimes like it's doing its thing at will.
I've never heard that phrase, but that's a great phrase.
I can see that, yeah.
That's a great phrase.
That's American music.
Yeah,
I love American music. I love being an American and getting to play American music.
That's the thing that's incredible about American music is that it's that perfect storm of all of these ingredients falling into place at the right time. Yeah. I mean, and that applies across the board.
We went through some shit too. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this podcast.
You can say whatever the fuck you want on here.
I feel like that our music is the thing that, like, of all the shit that we had to go through as a country, our music is the beautiful shining light out of all of it. It's like,
100%. Yes. Well, America does kind of like, for a long time now, is like basically led pop culture. Mm-hmm. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, I think that there are great contributions that America has made to art in the last 200 and how many 40 odd years, and I think that the facet of art that it has without question contributed to the most is music. There are other,
I feel the same.
I mean, I don't know how.
And I love film too.
That's so Brian's gonna make fun of me. That's my biggest thing, other than music. Honestly, more so than music, probably. My whole life is film. I'm the biggest film nerd in the world.
I like film too.
And I love. Don't get me wrong. I love American film. I think the great contribution in American cinema to the world is the Western, and the format of the Western, I think, is something that sadly in modern film is just sort of gone by the wayside. But as much as I love certain American cinema, the majority of it is not to the caliber of other places. I mean, Japanese cinema of the 20th century, Italian cinema of the 20th century, French cinema of the 20th century, just kicked our asses. Like, they kicked our asses. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a phenomenal American cinema, but I mean, it's not even in the same league as some of that stuff. But American music is unchallenged. I mean, we threw down the gauntlet for the last 200 years. And, whether it's the creation of the blues, again, through just seeming happenstance almost. Whether it's the blues, whether it's that becoming jazz, whether it's country music, whether it's rock and roll, all of these things.
There's no separation.
Exactly. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that it's such a that is our great contribution to the world.
If you try to separate it and try to go, well, this came from this, then you're missing the whole point of the reason that it exists.
Yeah.
Is that it's not the thing that it came from. It's this thing that like met all these other things and went, ooh, I'm gonna blossom in this way.
Yeah. And it's just that's a really smart way to put it. I think as someone who loves studying the trajectory of different American musics, I do feel oftentimes I can pigeonhole them just for my own sanity, because I'm trying to remember, okay, how did this subset of this style of traditional music come versus this, and how did these interact, and how does that play into the music that follows it? But really, at the end of the day, it's all the same. It's all pages from the same book. I mean, it is American music, and that's why I think that the best American artists who work in that field, they are aware of that, and they want to play in all those different sandboxes. And on the record, there will be those country influences, there will be those blues influences, there will be those jazz influences, there'll be everything, because they understand that the world of American music is all of those things, and it's the lump sum total of everything.
Yeah, man, that's what makes it so good, and that's where
Rock,
funk
flag,
came
and
from.
eagle.
Rock, leg, and eagle, buddy. No, it's really, I think it is our greatest contribution to the world, and is our music. I think that there's nothing like it that we've produced. It's just incredible. I mean, and how we get there is in my eyes stunning. It's amazing that we can get all of those things in that short amount of time.
Yeah.
That and like freedom and democracy.
That came. That was old.
Ice
That's old
cold
news.
All those things. Who's on the record?
Man, we originally cut live with Dennis Crouch on bass, Fred Eltringham, and Chris Gelb on drums. So we had two drummers at the same time. Jeff Taylor on keys and accordion, and Russ Paul on steel, and both electric and acoustic guitar, and I was playing both electric and acoustic and singing live. And then on one track, Nate Leith came in and played live.
Okay, nice.
But everything was cut together. And that was day one. Day two, I only had Fred Eltringham. I didn't have Chris on drums, because I didn't quite know how the double drums would fit on certain songs, and I just wanted to go more of a regular traditional route with it. And then after those first 2 days, there were a few tracks that weren't quite hitting me the way I wanted them to, so I put together an entirely different band of guys I play live with to try to see if that version would beat the original version. And it only did in one case.
Okay.
But on Cajun Baby, it's the band I mostly play with live. Everything else are great session players that I've got to work with a lot on different records, but don't get to play with live often. And on that was Jared Manzo, Ryan Stigman, or Stiggy.
Oh yeah, we went to college with him.
We did,
Right
yeah.
on. Yeah, he just got the Zach Top gig. He's playing steel.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
about that.
And
We were actually just saying earlier today we'd love to get him on here. I haven't
Yeah.
talked
I
to
know.
Ryan in a while. It's been a
talk
while.
to him.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
good. He's a good one to talk to.
Yeah, my roommate in college, who's a dear friend since like middle school. He was in a band with him for years.
Yeah, and we knew him, when we knew him, he was a sax player.
yeah.
And
He told me he sold
I
his
saw him
sax
a
and
few
bought it.
years later, and he was just crushing it
He
at steel.
He
I'm
showed
like,
up to
okay.
Legion one night, and Brian and I were like, "Dude, look who that is!" And we just went up and started talking. He's like, "Yeah, I play steel."
Must
He's
be
great,
nice
man.
to just be able to
I know, right?
transition like
Jesus.
that.
Sorry,
He
I
works
totally
hard, though.
derailed you. Oh yeah,
I've hung
he
out
is.
with him for a long time now, and I learned a lot from Stiggy. And I'm glad
He's
he's
a really,
a Nashvilleian
really
now.
sweet guy.
Good guy, yeah.
So I cut you off. So who else is on there?
On that one, Anthony Sadek played accordion. Billy Contreras was on fiddle
Okay.
for the whole record, except what Nate did. So I have two fiddle players. And then Roger Ross played drums from Wild Bill and the Bruisers. Very nice. And just on that track. But yeah, and then I cut a version of Amos Moses with a total bluegrass band.
Okay.
So Luke Monday on banjo, and his buddy on dobro, that his name's escaping me right now. That's terrible. But I only met him for that day, but he was amazing. Jared Manzo also played upright bass, and
That's a hell of a lineup.
yeah, man,
That's a real good
a lot
lineup.
of musicians.
That's real good. When did y'all?
Oh, Harry Clark on mandolin.
Okay. So when did y'all cut that?
Most of it was cut last February.
Okay.
And then we cut some of it kind of just throughout the year when I had time. I was touring a lot myself and with my partner, Hannah Juanita, and we did some co-tours. And then the year before, I was working for Melissa Carper and didn't have any time to cut that year except for Hannah's record and Eliza's record that I produced. And then I took another gig with Hannah Dasher in the fall, and I was with her for about a month. So that put another like halt on the album, but I still make most of my money playing guitar for people, so I got to pay the bills.
Because you're one of those guys. We've had a kind of a slew of you on recently of people whose names come up a lot in these conversations, just because you've got, you're dealing with a lot of people that you've been working, whether it's playing guitar as a sideman, whether it's
and I'm not organized at all, so it's so hard.
Yeah.
I forget what I'm doing so often.
One of the reasons I think your name has been coming up so much, one, you're just a fucking great musician and a great guy, but you've been doing a lot of producing recently. That's kind of been a big part of your life. First of all, when did that start? When did the production side of things start for you? And two, do you like doing it?
Man, I love it. Like it's I didn't know. I never thought that I wanted to be a producer or that would be something I would enjoy. But I loved knowing that certain producers made records that I loved, and I've always just loved listening to albums. And then when I first met Hannah and we were working on her album, I just realized that like I needed to produce this to get it done. Mm-hmm. And so I did her record first, her first record, and then I produced my record. And then we went back to do another Hannah album. I guess back in 22, we cut an EP first and then did a full record. And then that record went well. And I just figured that I was like able to do this because I was playing guitar with her and like enjoyed being in the studio. But then Eliza Thorn asked me to produce her album. So that was the first time somebody had come in outside of something I normally worked on to like work on a record with them. And I had such a great experience, like digging into songs with her and like trying to figure out who would really fit on this or what instrumentation would work. And then hers and Hannah's albums came out around the same time. And then I got a call from Dennis Crouch. And he told me, this was Christmas a year ago, so Christmas in 23. Mm-hmm. I was at home and I got a call from Dennis, and I don't think it was Christmas Day, but it was like the 23rd or something. I'd already gone home. And he was like, hey, I've been hanging out with Meg, and she said that y'all had gotten together and written some songs, or you'd helped her write on some songs, and she wants me to produce this album. But she kept bringing your name up, so I figured that we could produce it together. Mm-hmm. So he had me produce Meg's album with her, and we kind of both took different roles and kind of talked about, Basically, I just listened to whatever he told me because I'm the biggest Dennis Crouch fan you'll ever
As
meet.
You should be, honestly. As you should be.
And if y'all don't know who Dennis Crouch is, he's I think Nashville's greatest upright bass player of all time.
Just an absolute animal.
Yeah, and he's been on a million records.
I would love to have him in here. I'd love to pick his brain.
Y'all should get him on here, man. He would be so cool to talk to.
Do you find when you are producing, is it scratching the same part of your brain as when you're as a performer, or is it something different?
It's totally different. Producing my own record is my least enjoyable production job I've had.
Okay.
It's really hard to get outside myself and try to see myself as the artist the way that I get to work with other people when it's not my own work, not my own project. And And so I've gotten lucky that a lot of close friends that I respect have helped me out with my record and let me get their input and ideas off of it as I've produced this thing. But when I'm working with somebody else, I really get to just go, how would I like to hear this artist? What would I like to, what would I like this song to give? Like, where would I like to hear this thing? And I've loved every record I've got to work on just recently. And y'all had Meg Farrell, Sweet Meg, on your podcast. And her record, I just listened to it last night from top to bottom after the master came out. And it's just turned out so beautiful and so cool. And so much of like her is in it in the rawest way possible. And I felt like we really captured a lot of cool stuff that like, I'm getting a producer credit, but I feel like I was just kind of along for the ride. And I'm like, yes, like this is nice. And so
that's good though. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and getting to work with, especially Dennis and all the amazing players that he's introduced me to. A lot of them coming from the T-Bone Burnett camp. Like Rachel Moore mixed it, and she worked under T-Bone. And then Russ Paul is on both of our records, and so is Jeff Taylor, and he's on the Melissa Carper albums, and Chris Gelb played drums on both of them. He's an incredible drummer, and like I learned that I play so much better when I get to be around these guys. Like I'll try to figure out the stuff later that I did in the moment. I'm like, oh man, like I can't do this.
That's
again.
The best way. That's the best way I think to play is when you're around people that are that good. It does raise the caliber of your own playing, and I do find that if you are present, and you obviously have to put the time in and just have the ability to reach those places, but that's the best playing, I think, is when people are forced to. They'll come up with shit.
I think the best way, like one of the best ways to get better is playing with people who are better than you.
Yeah.
Oh,
that'll make you level up real quick.
Yeah. When did you get to Nashville anyway?
2018 I moved back.
Okay.
I grew up just like an hour south of here. But when I was 21, I left Nashville. Like I had a girlfriend and a band, and within like a month, my girlfriend left me for another dude, and the band broke up. So I moved to Florida to work on the beach for a summer and stayed down there for like 7 years.
Okay.
And then came back to Nashville. But I had a band down there, and we played, a lot of cool music, and ended up getting a booking agent out of New Orleans, and had like some real cool stuff going on. And then that ran its course, and I wanted to write country songs again. And so I guess I was like 29 when I moved back to Nashville back in 2018.
Has this always been the sandbox you like playing in, genre-wise?
Man, I was in a funk band for years down there, and played a lot of rock. I think I grew up loving country music though, and it's weird, like everything's kind of come back full circle. When I was in my teens, and I think that has a lot to do with you as a musician in your formidable years, whenever that is. I was really into Hank Sr. and Johnny Cash, Leonard Skinner, or like CCR and a lot of classic rock stuff. But I really loved the Walk the Line soundtrack. I loved the Oh Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack. I loved all the Johnny Cash American records. And 4 was the first one that had Hurt on it. Mm-hmm. And like I think I was in like 7th grade when that came out, and I loved that record. Like I would just listen to it over and over. That and Oh Brother Where Art Thou were like within a year or two of each other, and I would just listen to both of them all the time. And so that was T-Bone Burnett and
Rick Rubin. Yeah.
Rick Rubin, yeah. And I loved the way both of those records sounded, even more so than a lot of the original material. Like I loved Johnny Cash, but I loved hearing the way that the band on the Walk the Line soundtrack recorded it. And I've since gotten to work with pretty much all the guys that were on a lot of both of those records, and like kind of be involved with like how they work and function and produce and make music. And even though I haven't met T-Bone or Rick Rubin, and I would love to, but I love to get to work with people that worked with them and get to see like kind of like how they work and how they make an album, and like why I love those records so much, and get to work on stuff that's like kind of reminiscent of that. And that's been my favorite thing about producing. I don't know if I answered the question. I might have gotten lost on something
probably
else,
more exciting than my silly question.
But yeah, like I started off loving country music and blues. Like I love Muddy Waters and Johnny Winter. I've got a Firebird still that was my first electric guitar. Nice. And I got a tattoo on my chest.
That's awesome.
Gibson Firebird.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's I always think it's really interesting hearing how people get into whatever styles of music that they work in. And I think also it's also interesting to hear what other styles of music people like in general. I mean, even for so many people out here who that we may think of as country people, or we may think of as this or that. Like everybody, we're all multifaceted, and we all have different interests, and we all want to throw on a funk album. We all want to throw on a reggae album, or like whatever it might be, or punk rock, or whatever it is, So it's I always revel at the chance to kind of hear what else everyone is interested in besides the music that they might be playing, but also how you get into it, because it is a kind of a niche thing to obsess over in your life.
Yeah, I think you got to have a balanced musical diet.
Yeah, for sure.
You listen to one thing too long, it starts to get stale. You start to lose inspiration. But like mixing it up and listening to a different genre for a while can really like kind of put wind in your sails.
Did you really start taking music seriously when you were in Florida, or was that something that predated all of that? I mean, you were saying that you fell in love with that music as a kid. Were you doing music at that point, or was it just not?
Actually, so I asked for my first guitar at 2.
Wow.
And it's on video. But
really?
Yeah, it was
got a head start on me.
For Christmas, man. They had like on a tripod, like I don't know, 1990 or 91. And I was 2 years old, and my grandma had gotten me an electric violin. And like keeps trying to make me put it up and play it like this, and I keep turning it down and start strumming it, and I would sing songs. And after 2 times on the video, you can watch of her correcting me and telling me, "No, it's like this. It's not like this. It's up here. It's a violin. It's not a guitar." And I go, "I want guitar."
That's hilarious, dude. Do you have that video?
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'd love
my
to see
mom
that.
does somewhere. I need
Fantastic.
to post it sometime.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, you should. That's
You're a
hilarious.
man who knows what he wants. I respect that.
And,
Destiny right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got one at like 6 finally. They got me a real guitar. And I started taking lessons there for a while when I was a kid, and just wanted to play anything that I wanted to play. I really wasn't much for learning things that anybody else wanted me to learn. I only wanted to learn stuff that interested me, but a lot of it did and still does, and to me, music is still so magical. So much of what I don't understand is so magical to me. And
sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to say, one of the things I also find, and this might be a generalization, but I think it's true, a lot of times the people who get obsessed with guitar at a young age, what they're really getting into is music and songs. Whereas, if you're a piano player or if you're a saxophone player or what have you as a kid, don't get me wrong, I think any time a kid can pick up an instrument and learn it, that's a great thing in the world. But with those things, I find that oftentimes there's, it's more of the mechanics of doing the thing of like, okay, I'm going to learn how to play piano, or I'm going to learn how to play trumpet. Whereas with guitar, I think a lot of it's just the design of a guitar and what a guitar is historically built to do. Yes, don't get me wrong, I loved learning Leonard Skinner solos as a kid, and that's awesome. That's always going to be awesome. But I think the thing I was really falling in love with was songs. And guitars are great instruments for songs. And so I think a lot of us
they're pretty accessible
Yeah, they really are. Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't take that much skill to just learn how to strum through a chord progression. So I think as far as like, it's a very easy instrument if you're just looking to provide the rhythm and harmony to a song.
Exactly.
It's very easy to do that on.
And I find, don't get me wrong, there are people who, you know, I fell into this camp too, got obsessed with guitar and what guitar is capable of as an instrument, and you lose your mind just wanting to get good at that. But the thing I really find that I loved and what really got my heart as a young person was songs, and guitar I think is a great instrument for that, maybe more so than a lot of other things.
I agree. I kind of think that that's what interested me. I know as a kid there was this Canadian singer named Raffi that put these videos out, and I loved those videos like from the time I was an infant. Like there's
I don't think I've heard of him.
Yeah, and Daniel Lanois actually produced his first 2 albums.
Really?
Which blew my mind.
Interesting.
When I went back to look later, because I was like looking at Daniel Lanois' credits, because I was really studying him when I got into producing. I was like, I need to take this seriously.
Was that earlier in Lanois' career?
It was in the 80s, yeah.
Okay, so that would have been kind of in the middle
maybe
of it.
in the late 70s even.
Okay, so on the earlier side.
It was early.
Yeah,
like
wow.
really early, and he played bass on everything.
Oh, interesting.
And I think, I might be wrong, but at least one of the records he did. And Raffi just does kid songs. Like, it's just total kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Baby Beluga is a Raffi song.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bumping Up and Down in My Little Red Wagon. and
There's
stuff
something
like
to
that.
all of that. I mean, this is going to sound silly too, probably, but I think there is such an art to that. There's one of the things that I love, which I would love to do at some point in my life. I think there's such an art to writing children's books.
Yeah.
There really, really, really is.
Well, look at Shel Silverstein.
No, exactly. Like, there
know?
are people like that who are unbelievable, or you know, excuse me.
Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, there are people like that who I think, you know, Shel is a great example of that because he did everything. I mean, the man
he
was
could,
he could do literally
man.
everything. He was as good a songwriter as you can be. He wrote incredible poetry. Like the man could literally do anything.
Actually, on the way here, I got Bobby Bear's Lullabies, Legends, and Lies, which is
Really?
a whole record of just Shel Silverstein songs.
Yeah.
I bought that at Grammys on
He's got
right
yeah,
over
he's
here.
got some great. I mean, obviously obviously Boy Named Sue is the one everyone knows.
Boy Named Sue,
but
Marie Laveau.
Yeah, but he could write so
Cover
many
of the
great
Rolling
songs.
Stone.
Yeah,
Dr. Hook.
So many great songs. But I bring that up because I do think that there is a real art to writing children's songs, like nursery rhymes. I think it's really that might be, as someone who loves songwriting, that might be the hardest form to work in.
And what's
really
more
think it
classic?
is.
Like, everybody knows the songs from their childhood.
Exactly.
Oh, 100%.
Exactly. And I think that's far and away the hardest form to work in. And when people do it well, it makes me so jealous.
Oh man, or even like the scores too. Like my nephews were challenging me the other night. I was hanging out with them, and they were like, "Can you play the Imperial March from Star Wars?"
There you go.
And I'm like trying to pick it out and just fumbling so bad. It's such a difficult thing to play.
My
They're
work,
like, "That's not right. That doesn't sound like it." And I'm like, "I know."
it's getting there. My band classes for work, we at the end of every semester they put on like a show, and this past semester I had them do the Star Wars Cantina song. Like, you know, like the band,
yeah.
the song that the band plays, exactly. But we did it like a jazz arrangement.
Cool.
Like we did like a jazz arrangement where we took the head and we just passed it around, and then everyone took solos, and they were fucking into it. They were like, "This is great."
Who wrote that? I'm just curious.
Wasn't that John Williams?
That's Williams. Yeah, he
Really?
wrote that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I knew he wrote all the other Star Wars.
No, he wrote
music.
that too.
I just
It's a great
figured
melody. It's a really great melody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was hilarious, and they were into it. They want me to play like the SpongeBob theme music and stuff like that, you know. Dun, 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 dun.
I mean, John Williams, all his melodies are so legendary.
They really
dude,
are.
I don't think there's anyone who's written more recognizable melodies than John Williams.
I agree. I don't think there is a
Could you
single
think
person.
of any other person in human history
Just
that
Jaws alone, those two
Jaws,
notes.
E.T., yeah, Raiders. It's like insane.
There's so many melodies
Or
that are.
what's the Close Encounters of the Third
exactly.
Kind? It's the what is the melody there? It's the
I don't think I know.
bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I were to ask you like sing the most like memorable melodies that like anybody can recognize, like probably at least like 50% of them would be John Williams.
Or if you just hum his melodies, people will recognize him.
Yeah,
Home Alone.
sure. Yeah.
It is staggering. It
Superman.
is
He
absolutely
did
staggering.
the original Superman.
Yeah, he did.
Pretty much anything from a movie that's like everybody knows, like he's the one who wrote it. It's pretty crazy.
Now, if not him, Danny Elfman comes
Danny
in,
Elfman comes in
pretty
second,
high
yeah.
too.
Or
For me.
yeah, Danny Elfman and Hans. Those are, I think those are the only other two kind of underneath him. You know, we would do. My ex and I would do this thing where, like, when we were on long road trips, we would play an excerpt of a song from a score, and you'd have to name it as quickly as you could. And I swear the John Williams ones were like the throwaway ones because everyone's gonna get them.
Too easy,
exactly,
yeah.
they're too easy. I think that's the hardest part of being a songwriter, quite possibly, is melodies that is establishing a melody that surprises you, but also goes exactly where you think it's going to go. That balance is, you can spend, and God knows I will spend my entire life finding that balance because it's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, we've been talking about film. How about the passing of the giant David Lynch?
We were talking about that last episode because I was really honestly, like, genuinely sad about that. There's, whenever anyone that you look up to goes, it's sad, but with him that really kicked me in the balls. I was really fucking sad that he died.
He might be the America's greatest director.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking the exact same thing. I really do.
And to see what Scorsese and Spielberg both had to say about him was pretty impressive. And I feel like that kind of thing doesn't happen very often. And
my favorite art, whatever form you're working in, is that which is the most idiosyncratic and unique to the person making it. When I listen to Tom Waits, nobody sounds like Tom Waits. Yeah. And Tom Waits has sounded like a lot of different Tom Waits over his life. It's not one thing. If you listen to Rain Dogs or you listen to Bad As Me, those are two different people making those albums, but they're both Tom Waits.
Yeah, he's staying true.
Exactly. And like we were talking about, I think before we started rolling, I love film is my favorite thing in life. I adore film. It's my favorite thing. And the output that American film has had has not been to the caliber of other things, of other facets of art. Obviously, I think music is the great contribution that I think America has had in its short life. I mean, the output we've had musically.
Well, we had Hollywood, and Hollywood kind of sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work.
And don't get me wrong, there have been just we had the golden age of Hollywood. I mean, there are American films that I think are unbelievably good. Just unbelievably good. I mean, put Jimmy Stewart in, and I'm sold. Put Paul Newman in it, and it's the greatest movies ever made.
But the depth and ways, I agree with you. Yeah,
but I do truly think Lynch is up there as, and it's funny. It's a thought that had not crossed my mind until he was gone. And I think about him a lot because I love him as an artist. But I think if you're gonna come up with a name for who's the greatest American director we've had, he's in the conversation at least.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know why that never crossed my mind, but it's crossed it a lot since he's been gone. And I can't
remember who
feeling.
it was. It was either Scorsese or Spielberg, and I think it was Spielberg that got to cast Lynch as John Ford in the movie.
That was Spielberg, yeah.
Spielberg, yeah. And I kind of think the same way you said earlier that the Western is the greatest American contribution to film. And it's kind of cool that David Lynch got to play the greatest American Western director. And
that is beautiful.
And Spielberg said something about how
he nails
my
it
two
by
favorite.
being completely David Lynch and completely John Ford at the same time.
I haven't seen it. I got to go check it
movie,
out.
I'm not a fan of the movie, but that scene is phenomenal.
What's the movie?
I wish I could think of the name of the movie. It's essentially Spielberg's life. He made almost like a biopic of his life, of his early life. Mm-hmm. It's not my not my thing. But that scene stole the entire. It's like the end of the movie.
Sounds a little
Stole
self-indulgent there to make your own biopic, but
a little odd. But he is, yeah. Another person that we lost recently, just this past week, that we haven't talked about, is Garth. We lost Garth Hudson. And
man, I thought you were going to say Garth Brooks. I was
No,
like,
no.
I didn't hear about that. But
I don't even know who that is.
we lost Garth Hudson, and that was another one that
Yeah,
really
man, what a
made
legend.
me fucking sad.
he might be the originator of Americana.
There's, as a Canadian, there's a good chance he was. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's funny. Like, so the band is that's my favorite group of people to ever play together.
Man, I love the band.
And I love that group because it does this magical thing that is really hard to put your finger on. But when I listen to them, and this is the reason I love them as a kid, and even if I couldn't put my finger on it then, you're simultaneously hearing 5 complete individuals who have their own voice, their own musical voice, their own things to say, and yet somehow simultaneously become this singular thing when they play together.
Yeah.
And it's this weird juxtaposition of these two things happening at once, of these 5 incredibly unique men who had very distinct, idiosyncratic things to say, and yet when they were together, it sounded of a whole. And Garth was a huge part of that. Obviously, this is not something people don't know, but Garth, when he joined the band, he was the only member of the band who had a formal musical education. I mean, Garth is truly, I think,
He gave him all lessons, right?
Yeah, he did. The only way he could justify being in it, because his parents were like, there's no way you're joining this fucking band. The only way he justified it was, he was like, they all need to pay me like however much a week to give them lessons. So he justified it to his parents as, I'm teaching this band, as like, which I think is hilarious. But I truly think he was just one of the best on a technical level. I think he's just one of the best American musicians ever. Or I call him American, but
He's American.
Yeah, American.
North
Yeah,
American.
North American. Just
Maybe not in the United States.
I really do genuinely think his musical mind was staggering. But the reason that I love him, I think of this is a long-winded explanation, but I think Garth is worth it. Yeah. I'm reminded of the last show that they played with Bob Dylan in the 1966 tour. There are 3 shows that stand out on that tour. There's the May 17th show, which is the Judas show. There's the May 24th show, which is his birthday show, which is just fucking insanity. And then there's the last show of the tour, which is the 27th. And the last show of the tour, right before they played the last song, Bob introduces the band, which he had never done on that tour before, and of course, who wants to introduce a band when everyone's fucking screaming at you for 2 hours, you know what I mean? And just booing you and throwing shit at you. But he introduces the band and he says, they're all poets. And if it comes out that way, it comes out that way. And that's why I love Garth, is because he was such an incredible musician on a technical level, just his musical mind is just staggering.
Yeah.
But he had things to say. And that is just such a beautiful combination. And that's true of all those men. And I'm deeply sad, which is a strange thing to say because I've never met any of them. I'm deeply sad they're all gone. And it's a real shame that Garth was the last to go.
Yeah. Man, I'm glad we got as much as we did, though. I think Garth's amazing, and he's always kind of been my favorite member of the band. Him and Levon, for sure. But yeah, there's just something about the way that Garth played everything. Like his keys playing was awesome. His accordion playing was great.
His sax playing.
Yeah, he did a lot of triple layered sax stuff on the.
He could literally play any fucking instrument and not like oh, I'm gonna.
No, he
I
played
can
it.
He played.
No, he would play it.
I mean, that's. I think that
He didn't mess around. There was
there was none of that. None of that.
Well, that's lack of ego. Garth didn't seem to have much of an ego. He just cared that the music was good.
Yeah,
and I think that's the mark of a great player.
And I think also just a really beautiful testament to him is throughout the course of all of their lives, all of those men at many points made a real conscious effort to say how much they respected him and how much they thought, how highly they thought of his playing as a musician. I mean, and when Levon Helm is telling you that, or I mean, any of those guys, that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And I think that he is up there with the best of the best.
Well,
I'm sad.
To Garth.
Yeah, to Garth.
We'll finish off this Tito's.
Cheers.
If we get the sponsor here.
There you go. We'll get that Tito sponsorship soon enough. Anyway, not to bring the mood down, but just I thought,
man.
No, that was a wholesome moment right there.
Worth pointing out. I mean, there's a lot of great musicians out there, and it's sad when some of the best go. But I think if nothing else, whether it's thinking about David Lynch or whether it's thinking about Garth, it just for me, it reminds me to just keep making shit and keep enjoying the process of making things. I mean, that's the thing.
That's what they did.
Yeah, and that's the thing that if that's the thing that puts a smile on my face when I think of either of those people, but especially Lynch, because he was so outspoken about those things. He's like, just do this because you love doing it. You know, like
there's really no other way.
There's no other way. I mean, he was a person who saw the beauty in literally everything. I mean, the guy could just sit there and stare at a brick wall and be like, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life." And there is something about getting to that place as a person where you can just sit in that. And there's a great video of him when they're filming the Twin Peaks, The Return, and he's sitting in his director's chair, and he's just looking at the red curtains. And he's just saying, "Oh my God, they're so beautiful. Look how beautiful." Like, he can't get over how beautiful these fucking red curtains are. And I'm like, that is what life is about. It's about sitting in that fucking director's chair and just like enjoying the fact that you're doing it. You know?
Yeah.
It's so totally wonderful. I love that.
Maybe the Transcendental meditation helped out with that. I know he was an avid guy.
I think there's so many ways to get there, whatever it is, whether it's meditation or what have you. I don't think, and again, this is coming from an idiot. I know nothing. I don't think that there is one singular way to get there, because I found that there are people in life who can get there so many different ways, and it's just about what works for you.
Have you dabbled in meditation at all, or?
Yeah, I need to more.
I do too. I get bored too quickly though.
And I think it's a heavy discipline too.
My ADHD brain I get sidetracked quick. But I feel like it would be really beneficial for me if I actually did try to get into it.
I think sometimes I do it without purposefully doing it too. I would just kind of get in a state sometimes where I think about something for a while, and then I realize what I'm doing. Now, I don't know that that's the same as Transcendental meditation. I've talked to some people who practice, and it's a little more disciplined than that. And I think it's worth doing, and I should do it. I just haven't. Mm-hmm. But I think it's probably a worthwhile thing to do.
For sure. Yeah.
I like taking psychedelics too, and
nice.
trying to enlighten myself more that way, and not necessarily in like a party thing either, but like of really trying to learn and know as much about yourself as you can, or to experience more. And,
for sure. I think that is one of the reasons I like music so much, is because it is kind of its own form of a meditative state.
It puts you in that
especially
place.
like I've always been like infatuated with like improvisational music, and I think that's part of the reason is because there is like a certain.
There's a place
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There is a place you go to, like this certain state of mind you hit when you're at your peak performance of improvisation. That is just like this meditative state where there's like nothing in your brain anymore, and you almost like transcend to this
you're a vessel at that point.
I know you know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I do think, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but it's true. I think that if there's a point of life, if there's a meaning to all of this, I think it's that.
Yeah.
I think whatever it is.
And I think there's a lot of different ways to get to that, but like
to me, like I do a lot of jujitsu. That's a big part of my life, and it's the same thing with that. When you're when you are just in the moment and you're present, it is literally the exact same feeling as when you're playing with a phenomenal band and everyone is present.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about anything. You're just living in that moment. I do think that's the, I think
What do they
that's
call
Your
it?
the
brain
The
is
flow
empty
state?
and you're just like,
that's what it's,
because
whatever it is.
it's so difficult to entirely focus on something where like you get to this state where there's literally nothing in your brain besides the thing that you're doing. And
Well, I think in the same way that Lynch hit the subconscious that way in film, Thelonious Monk does the same thing for me when it comes to music. Like,
Totally.
I'll listen to his, not only are his pieces kind of written that way, but like when you hear him improvise through it, or like I was just listening to Straight No Chaser not long ago, and I'd never realized
good
that
one.
he's like humming the things that he's playing in the background.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
start
he
hearing
does.
him.
A
like,
lot of guys do that.
yeah.
Same
It's
if
like,
you listen to like
man.
Oscar Peterson
Yeah.
recordings, you'll always
Oscar
hear
does it a
some
lot.
like faint humming in the background,
Yeah.
like being picked up the mics.
And that's why I think, I think jazz is America's greatest musical form. I think country songs are my favorite songs, and I think it all kind of ties in together. But those great jazz players are just the greatest, to me, musicians of all time.
I agree.
And,
For
and the
sure,
way that
yeah.
they express themselves, and it's not boxed in. It's totally like
I
how
mean,
they
just
are.
from an improvisational perspective, like it's basically like the peak. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
oh,
Like,
it's
and
so
that
good.
I think that's why I eventually, like, I didn't start out as a jazz player, but I've always loved, like, improvisation has always just fascinated me into, like, to me, like, yeah, it's cool if you can compose something that's really cool, but, like, to me, it's, like, way cooler if that shit just came out of
Can
you.
you just express it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
man.
there's something you get in the moment that you just can't get with something you compose, because like when you're improvising, that is truly like what's coming out of you at that moment. Whereas like if you're playing a composed solo, yeah, there's some great ones out there, but you are what's the word? Like you're regurgitating, maybe that's not the right word.
I think you're seeking perfection, and that's not the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is not to perfect a piece. The goal is to express it the best way
Exactly.
you can.
And you get that in the most purest form in an improvisational format.
And I've noticed that as a producer on these records I've got to work on, I will hire really great session players, but I won't tell them anything about it until they're in the room. And then they'll have a chart in their hand, and we'll play it one time acoustically with the artist, and then they have to just respond. And what you get out of them in that first moment, before anybody's had any time to think about anything really, is the coolest stuff. Especially if they're great players. Not all players work that way, but some players are just like, throw them into the fire and they're just gonna cook. Like it's gonna be so good. And
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian's the only person who's played on all of my records, and the thing that Brian knows damn well at this point is I don't like showing people the songs most of the time. It's like I would rather you show
Which
up.
is fucking annoying.
I know it is. I
sometimes.
know. But
making
it's
you
like,
work hard.
It's like I want you to.
I think there's a balance.
Yeah, there's a
and
sweet spot.
Casey's a little too far on the other side of that balance.
But it's like I want to hear. I want you in the room because I respect and love your musical mind, and what I think is best going to put that on the table is approaching it that way, where it doesn't feel like you have the time to comp something up.
But I think if you are thrown into a situation where you don't know what you're playing and that keeps you too much in your logical thinking brain, where you're thinking, okay, what chord comes next?
Exactly.
Right? When you get that purest form of self-expression, I think is when you can really just turn your brain off and
that's
let
why
loose.
the balance is there.
But if you don't know the song you're playing, or then you have to think about the changes. You have to think about this.
What I've always done, which I think is the way to do it. Like, for example, I'll use that gig that we've got on Tuesday. Brian's heard me play those songs over and over and over again. Today, we'll just fuck around and play through a couple tunes. Not really, whatever, just play them. And so when he's up there, Brian knows the songs. We may not have like talked about like, here's how, you know, we're going to this after the A-B section, or like, you know, here's where the bridge is, or whatever. But Brian knows the songs.
But you played through it.
He has it in his ear.
Yeah,
that's
over the ear.
think,
yeah, that's all that matters. As long as
exactly, and that's where I think
your
the sweet
brain
spot
knows
is.
The sound. Then
Exactly, that's where the sweet spot is. I
for
find.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
You want to. It's actually very similar. Life is all the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to the way that we usually start these things, except today for some reason, where we usually ease into it, where there's not like an okay, go. That can work. I'm sure that there's times where that yields good things for people. But whether it's music or whether it's a conversation, I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you just you ease the person into it in the sense that they understand that they have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
Like everyone sat down and talked over the course. So like everyone can hold a conversation. And it's like if you make it this big thing where, okay, here's the chart, here's the arrangement, this is exactly what your part is. I need you to go home and learn this. We're going to practice this 5 times before the show. It's like that will yield a certain result. And I'm sure that will be for certain people looking for that specific result, what they want. But that's not the result I want. What I want is something natural, like a conversation like this, where you can just sit down and you can just hang out and talk. Same kind of approach.
Totally.
I've learned 2 things when it comes to that. The first time I worked with the magnificent Dennis Crouch, I asked him if he wanted any demos ahead of time, and his response was, no, I'd rather respond in the moment. I think it'll, get a better reaction. And I'd never heard anybody say that before, so I'm like, okay, cool. So then, as I did a few more records and realized the things that worked and didn't work, I started trying to chart songs and arrange songs in ways that had more of a traditional sense, but still stayed true to the song. So if you're keeping it in a language that these session players understand, then they're going to be able to be comfortable and play, but you're still achieving the song that the songwriter originally came out to get, or was going after. And I found that and I haven't perfected it, but getting closer to that balance is the thing for all. That these guys have never heard it, but they're looking at something and playing something that seems familiar, and then the songwriter is still getting their point across. And that if I can bridge that gap as a producer, that's like my favorite place to be, because then it's all just popping off at once. And you get 2 or 3 takes and you've got a thing going, and having people together is the best way. Overdubbing's not bad, especially if you have good players, but you don't have to overdub if everybody's there playing together and having a conversation together and saying the thing at the time that when it needs to be said. You'll find yourself having to go back and edit later if you didn't get them all at the same time.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I think, too, is also the style of music you're working in. There are some styles of music where I think you kind of need to have everyone in the room, and there's other styles of music where I think that layering is almost necessary. It really just
I would only
depends
hire me on an Americana record, so that's the only thing I can speak from. So.
I just think there's a certain magic that's created with everyone in the same room, and
what it is?
There's a certain spark.
It's the exact same thing as if we did this, but we were Skyping people in.
Yeah,
it's like
it's
if we
not
had,
the same.
It's like if
not
instead of you being here in the room with us, where we can just hang out
you're
and talk,
at home on your couch,
you're on your
laptop,
couch on FaceTime or whatever. It wouldn't be the same
wouldn't
thing.
be nearly as good as a conversation.
Exactly.
And I think the same thing can happen with music.
It's true.
Where
Totally.
technically it's the same thing, but there's something that gets lost.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing, and again, I think a lot of that is dependent on genre. I mean, I'm sure if you're producing a hip hop rap album, you don't need to have everyone in the same room, probably. It depends. It just depends on what.
So that's one of those things that's still
with.
magical to me. I don't own a computer right now, and somehow I've been making these records without a computer. I just have my phone and I get the stuff sent to me and my notebook, and I'll listen in my car. I don't have nice speakers, so I just I'll draw a timeline of the song. And then, at places I want to do things or make things happen or make corrections, I'll just, timeline it in the song.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Daniel, that's a thing I got from Daniel Lenoir. He likes to write a timeline for a song.
I never knew that.
Figure that out. And and it really works. And I don't love computers, but I can talk to an engineer to get the computer stuff done, so I can express what I want out of my notebook. But dang, I don't even remember where I was going with this, but it had something to do with not understanding the technology. But
Yeah, but again, you find what works for you. I mean, and that's the sweet
the
spot with
hip hop.
anything.
That's
Yeah,
what
hip hop.
it was.
Yeah.
Yes, I shouldn't have gotten stoned before it came in.
You're not the first one.
I don't know that I would like be any good at the hip hop record outside of trying to make it with a live band, somebody that wants to rap. But to me, hip hop is the art form of sampling music that's already been recorded and creating something new out of it. And you know, whether you rap over it or not, it doesn't matter. It's hip hop is the sampling. It is that form of creating that beat that grooves so good that you can
absolutely.
rap over it. And you know, like Jay Dilla or Dre or those guys, you know, that to me is magical, because I can't do that, and I wouldn't begin to
For
even
sure.
think
Yeah,
about
I mean,
how
it
to
is
do that.
something to be said. Like, a lot of hip hop songs are like 8 bars, and they loop that for the entire
And
song.
it's so
and
good,
and
the way
it
that
stays
grooves.
interesting through the entire time. Like, if you think about the music you make, like, imagine trying to write 8 bars and repeating that over and over, right? Like, it'd be hard to make something sound that good. So,
oh
like,
man. Yeah. Well, I was in a funk band for a long time, and so I got
That's another-
that concept
yeah.
of it too, and I like that. And even I've heard that T-Bone Burnett, when he's talking to the band, that's the concept of getting the dog fixed on the ceiling fan going round and round.
yeah.
That's the goal in music, is to like keep
Yeah.
that loop going. Keep
I think we
that groove.
talked about this recently on one of these podcasts, but yeah, that's like a good groove will make a song. Like, a lot of those old funk bands, like a lot of James Brown tunes are like an 8-bar loop, and they'll do that shit for like 10 minutes and you love it the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to write something that good.
It's hard to play something that consistent.
Yeah,
for that
you got to
long.
be fucking tight.
And keep people in it. Like, to put people in that, you know, hypnotic state is not an easy task.
Yeah, totally.
And but I think that's what all great musicians do. I mean, like, some people like when people really, you know, peacock and they're showing off and doing Eddie Van Halen stuff, or
It's for some people. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a time and a
Yeah.
place.
but I think for the most part, people like that meditative state. They want to be put in that place that they can groove. And
It's all about
why
groove.
J.J. Cale's so cool, you know? Like, it's not because he was the greatest. It's
Is that something you actively practice, like timing and stuff like that? You ever break out the metronome or?
every day.
Nice.
I like to practice to a metronome. And I've even had guitar students lately. I've just been trying to teach what simple things I know to some people. And I always stress that I don't like to record to a metronome. I don't like my drummers to use metronomes.
Yeah.
But I like that everybody practices to one, because it lets you know the sense of where true time is at all time.
I
Even
think
if you wanna
the best
mess
way to
with
go.
it,
I
you
think
gotta
the
know.
number one thing, and it's something I've especially realized in, you know, the few months that we've been doing this podcast, like, if you really want to get better and like just sound way better, like, get your time together.
Yeah.
Break out the metronome. And I feel like, especially for singer-songwriters, because we've been doing mostly singer-songwriters in here, and the number one thing I've noticed, or we're like, how could this person like be way better than they are right now, is like,
For sure.
a lot of them
Time.
lot of them need to hit the metronome.
It's time. Yeah.
And I
that's-
feel like, you know, people like me, like instrumentalists, like, I feel like that's more common for them to practice in that with a metronome. But I feel like a lot of singer-songwriters, they just focus on writing their songs and they kind of ignore
For
that other
sure.
aspect. But like,
I think I'm lucky enough to sit in both worlds
Yeah.
enough.
Well,
Like,
you're a
I
great
love
guitar
writing
player.
songs. Man, I try.
Like-
In this town, I'm mediocre.
dude,
but
honestly, like, out of all the like local guys in your vein of the sort of like classic country, you know, vein, you're definitely one of my favorite guitar
man.
players to
No,
go
you
see.
suck ass. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you are. I do really mean
Right.
that. Like,
I
yeah,
appreciate
I love
that.
going to see you play, because as a guitar player,
That's
think you
one of the
sound
best
great.
things about Nashville, though, is like if you want to be praised as a guitarist, do not move here.
I learned that one pretty quick.
The best are here, and you're never going to be the best.
Yeah.
Even if you're Guthrie Trapp, you're not the best, and I think that's part of what pushes cats like him, and I'm amazed by it, and I love it. I want to be around that as much as possible, and I don't care if I'm never going to be the best. That's fine.
Well, there's always going to be
I'm
someone
going to be my best
you
because
can't
I'm
always
around
compare.
those guys. You're around better players, and it's just going to push you and move you. And
you also realize the best is subjective, and you
Yeah,
realize
totally.
that the goal is not to be the best. The goal is to be the best iteration of you, and that's also a moving target, and that's always going to be a moving target.
Well, I think you have to be okay with people being better than you and pushing yourself. And not everybody does that. Like, I feel like most people don't even last a year here.
Yeah.
And
Most people, I think,
roll.
I think it's just human nature. I think people want to, with whatever it is in life, they want to do the comfortable thing, and they want to sit in the comfortable thing because that's what's comfortable and because that's what's safe. And you can't look down on people for doing that because that's just how we are.
Yeah.
But the people who truly are impressive at whatever it is that they're impressive at recognize that, no, I can't think like that. I have to be in motion. I can't stay static.
Yeah.
The second you stay static,
The
that's
tension's what makes it.
Yeah, exactly.
And music,
Exactly.
if you really get music, you figure that out. The more tension you can add around something before you release it, the more people are going to love
That
it.
is-
It's just going to
It's
feel
even
so
just
good.
like this
Tension
is,
and release is like a huge
And how to
fucking
learn
thing.
how it works, man. It's so...
That
you
is
know.
like
But even just to apply that to rhythm, it's the same thing with rhythm. You could be playing fucking quarter notes, and if you're dead on the money, it's not the same thing as if you can literally put tension in rhythm, and it's hard because it's one of those things that you can't. It's very difficult to teach that to someone.
Yeah.
But to be able to express that through, I mean, I'm probably hyper aware of this just because I do so much teaching, but I always break music down to just two components. It's pitch and it's rhythm. That's everything. I mean, anything in music you can break. Now, those are, once you open Pandora's box, I mean, everything's in there for both of those things. But that's really those are the two components you're dealing with. And oftentimes I find people get fixated on the pitch side of things, whereas there's a world of pain for you as a musician to obsess over and to be just in awe of the beauty of when you go down that path for rhythm.
So
There's so much there.
I got extremely lucky in that at around 19, I started playing in the band with this guy named Isaac Eady. Okay. And all through our 20s, we were roommates and played music together. And he comes from a musical family here, and he is now one of the drummers for Tedeschi Trucks.
oh wow.
And he's amazing and hardcore, man. Like if I remember one time we got off a gig and I felt like it was good, and he was like, "You're not counting your 16th notes," and just walked off. He was just mad. And I was like, I don't even know what set him off, but it made me go, all right, I need to think about that more. Like, I need to think about these quick things I'm doing. Are they sloppy or are they in? And some cats will, I mean, lots of people, especially in Nashville, singers and pitch. But, man, those cats that take rhythm seriously, they're just as serious. And if you get around enough of them, you start seeing, like, why they're so special. Like, why them taking it so seriously. And maybe they get mad. People get mad. People are emotional. But it's not like a personal thing. And you can learn from any kind of critique. Even from a dumbass. Like, if a dumbass is critiquing you, as long as it's got some kind of original thought to it, you might as well listen to it and try to see what the hell's going on. You might be better off for it.
Gleam there, yeah. We had one of the guys we had a little while ago was Ry Bradley, who's a phenomenal guitar player and songwriter around town. And last year, I went on tour with him out to Norway, and he does like kind of like traditional rock and roll stuff, but he does his own songwriting for it. Just a fantastic guy, and to me, that's a really great example of that, because the form you're working in can seem very simple when you've got 3-4 chords. I mean, that's anything. It's country music. That's whatever.
but the form can seem so simple, and he is.
But you can do so much with
he's a hard ass. There's so many little things in here. Is like, no, that was wrong.
Yeah.
That was wrong. Do that again. Like
Infinite
and there's
nuance.
and I love that. I mean, there's so much you can learn from that. I mean, we were out there for a month, I think, just about a month, maybe a little more than that. I mean, I can't tell you how I came back feeling like, fuck, I am such a better musician now. Just because, I mean, even just sitting with those same songs, and there was a lot of tunes, you just get so much better if you're constantly refining those things and really trying to sit in those things. And some people aren't interested in that. Some people are like, I know the songs. I know the changes. You know, I know my parts. And it's like, yeah. And yeah, I get that to a degree, but I'm an obsessive person. I like obsessive.
Those people get fired.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen that a lot. So it's like you got to stay on top of your game if you want to last. Is this thing like
all those really small things, the tiny little nuanced things. That's what separates the good players from the really, really, really good players.
It is.
Like
small
anybody
stuff.
like. All the fancy licks and blah, 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 like everybody can play those. Like what makes the best guys is like those tiny little things that like on a surface level you don't even notice. But like when you really dig deep, there's a lot of just small subtleties, and working out those things is like the hardest part about getting better. But like when you finally do work those things out, like that's what really takes you to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's why like learning music is so difficult, because there's no like learn one really difficult thing and then you've got it mastered.
Totally.
It's not ever going to be that way. It's the small nuances that are what matter, and you have to pay attention to all of it. And you and that's probably part of like the meditation or whatever the subconscious thing is what's driving cats that really live in this thing for a long time. Like I think people even get good young and they can just rip, and they don't last forever, because the small nuances is what makes the difference. It is what makes you want to stay in it for a long, long time and keep you interested.
And also, not to in any way sound cynical, but when you're young, you don't have anything interesting to say. you might have the technical abilities to do something, and that is a feat in and of itself, and that's beautiful. But that's different than having something to say.
Yeah,
totally.
And again, going back to Garth, it's that combination. It's having the ability. It's having this tool belt that's big enough to do all the things that you want it to do, while also having something interesting to build with that tool belt. I mean, that's the magic combination. And when I find a lot of young people that do have those skills, they just don't have they don't have anything to say with it, and that's a good thing, because it's somewhere to go. You can build off of that. But I think you're right. A lot of people kind of check out there because they think, oh, I've figured this out. It's like, no, you've figured out half the equation.
Yeah.
Or, you think you figured out half the equation.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? Thelonious Monk said that a genius is just someone that sounds like themselves.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you really start to think about that, are you just regurgitating something, or are you saying something?
And I also, the other thing that is worth noting in regards to that, all of the people that I think do find their voice in whatever world they're working in, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's painting, whatnot, they all start by this process of assimilation, this process of finding the things, the artists that have come before, and losing themselves in that, and almost putting on a mask.
Yeah,
okay,
you got to copy the greats.
Exactly. Like what does this feel
best.
like to sit in this thing? Whether again it's music or film or painting, any sculpture, whatever it is, the best that I find have gone through that process of putting on those masks and trying those different voices. And then it's through that process that you begin to sort of codify this this voice of your own, and that voice is also going to change. That voice isn't going to be static, but I really do genuinely think it's only through that process, because all of us have experienced that. All of us have obsessed over certain artists and obsessed over these these minute little things that make those artists what they are. And you're never going to be that person, but you try and put that skin on and see what is work. Why does this work? Why do I like this? Why do I love this? And then you try a different skin on. And it's through that process I find that great artists can blossom into themselves.
Yeah. Well, doesn't that tie into imitation is the highest form of flattery?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless you can play like your heroes at their best, then you're not doing them any justice or service as to what they contributed. Like, you're not gonna like help build on that if you don't learn what they figured out.
Yeah,
it's kind of how I feel, because you
Absolutely.
can't find yourself unless you master the thing that's like driving
and I think
you.
when people
'Cause
say
the originality, like, you know, I mean, like, originality comes from finding what other people have learned, and then you can be original. Then you can express yourself, but you're not going to do that before you've done that work or before you've dedicated yourself to that point that you're able to understand how far it's gone, whatever art form you're doing, whether you're Salvador Dali figuring out Picasso,
exactly,
you know,
exactly,
or you're David Lynch figuring out whatever he did.
well, he was a painter. I mean, that's his whole life. He was a painter. He never even looked at himself as a
Kubrick
filmmaker.
was a photographer.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that I said that I said that Lynch was the greatest American director, but I forgot
Kubrick's
about
up there
Kubrick,
too. I mean,
but
Kubrick's out there too. Kubrick's interesting because he,
is the one without the other, you know.
yeah, exactly.
And,
But and I think when people say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, they oftentimes say that in an almost dismissive way.
I think people think
you know,
of imitations as comedians, and they're
Yeah.
imitating people, and that's cool. And you have to respect somebody to really imitate them well. But
I do think there's something deeper there. I think that
you
phrase
have to
me at
totally
least,
love that person.
Yeah, you need to. It is
Or
as
that-
if in order to understand the depth of which certain art can go, you need to put on those skins and understand. Okay, I'm not this person, but this is incredible what this person accomplished, and maybe I can use this. And I do think that's
Hopefully.
hopefully
you
you can use it. Yeah,
because there's so many times I try to implement stuff that I think that I've learned. Man, the quickest way to fall flat on your face live is to
100%.
try something new that you think you've got down.
There's a quote from. There's a relevant quote from Miles Davis. I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember. But
Well, he can do
it was
it
something about more along the lines of you need to get things to the point where they're.
you got to do it in Miles' voice, dude. Why would you do it in this voice? Come on, dude. You're missing your chance.
You need to, like, when you're performing, like, whatever's coming out needs to be almost like subconscious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you when you're practicing, you're like thinking very intentionally about what you're doing, and if you try to do that on a gig, like, it's just not gonna work. Like, you need to be in that state of unconscious, like, not thinking, like we were talking about earlier. And, if I totally know the feeling of, like, being on a gig and, like, there was something, you've been practicing all week that you're like, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to stick that in my solo at the gig. And then you just totally fuck it up.
You know what I think it
because
means?
it takes you out of that state of
the flow state isn't there anymore.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the flow state.
I think what it means to be truly professional on a musical level too is you have to be okay with sounding bad publicly sometimes.
Totally.
You can't get
Because
comfortable with that or be like, okay, this is just what I do. I just sound bad. I don't mean that, but I mean sometimes you have to go for it and you have to fail, and you have to be okay with that.
Well, it's inevitable. Like, it's going to happen.
Well, it's also, I think the best artists put themselves in that situation. So, I mean, like, to, I guess, pivot to a different art form, someone like Louis C.K. will work up this material when he's trying to work on new material.
Oh, comedians are the best at that.
He'll go up, he'll burn whatever the stuff is. He'll come out of the gate knowing, okay, I know this is going to work. And then he's got nothing. And so I need to sit in this and figure out how do I, like for him, his process for a long time, and I think he still does this. Once, you tend to end your special with the strongest material. He would then start his next cycle by coming out on stage when in the writing process and starting the show with his strongest material, because you have nowhere to go from there. You have what follows that has to be as strong or stronger. It has to be stronger. Yeah. And so I think that there is something in, again, whatever form you're working in, there's something to actively putting yourself in that situation. Like I love digging holes. Brian probably hates this. I love digging holes for myself on stage. I love it. I love feeling.
I kind of do too.
I love
that. You. I totally understand.
Because there's just something to that feeling of not caring. Maybe it's adjacent to not caring, but that feeling of, okay, I know where I'm at. Now let's see if I can actually get the work done. Otherwise, it feels like you're just sort of playing, or not playing. Otherwise, it feels like you're not doing the hard work in my head, for my own sick sort of
I think
approach.
There's give and take. I think you got to know that you've got enough that can come after it that will land with the audience.
You got to know that you can pull something out.
That stand-up and playing live music are very similar, and I'm the worst joke teller ever. And so the fact that they're similar, but the fact that they don't, one doesn't translate to the other that easily is really cool to me, because I can totally understand how to get through a set and how, some things are going to land and some things aren't going to land, and how you got to have these moments to like really reel the crowd back in. But the fact that I can't get laughs, I have one joke that I can tell on stage before one of my songs, and I barely get it off half the time. Sometimes the crowd's just looking at me like, huh? And then sometimes it lands and they laugh, and it's great, and it's like, yes,
dude. I've always thought that stand-up has to be like one of the most brutal art forms to try to get into, because like with music, like you can play a bad gig, but like you don't have that real-time response to how well you're doing. Like if you're doing stand-up, you tell a joke and like nobody laughs, like you feel that. Whereas like if you play a bad gig, like people are still gonna clap at the end of your song. People are still gonna come up to you and say like, "Hey, nice job, man." After
Normally
your gig.
that's
but
the
like
case.
with stand up, it's just this. There is no like
redemption.
You know immediately how well your joke worked in real time.
Man, I played up in upstate New York like last year and did a show and tried a new song out that was a little more soulful than most of my country stuff. And this cat comes up to me at the end and buys a hat and buys a CD and goes, "Man, I loved all your songs except that one song. That song sucks." And he just walks off. And I mean, he said the title. I'm not going to say it in case somebody likes that song, but I'm like, all right,
Brian and I did a show in Boston, and we did an arrangement of some Hendrix tune. I wish I could remember which one it was.
I don't remember this.
We did an arrangement of some Hendrix tune. We played it with Montez and I think Joe Soldati. And after the gig, someone came up to me, exact same situation, came up to me, was like, "That was a great fucking show, man. I loved it." And he's like, that Hendrix song sucked," and just like left. I was like, okay.
But stand up,
and of course he kept playing.
Stand up has to be so difficult because like you don't figure that out after the gig.
That's right.
You figure it out immediately after it happened, and then you have to deal with knowing how bad that went for the rest of the time you're on stage.
See,
that's got to be fucking brutal.
I almost wish that there was that feedback mechanism with music. So like back.
I think it is though.
Yeah.
I think when you take a bad solo.
Yeah.
When you play wrong or play out in the wrong way, and say it's a tune that you're not even totally like sure about. Like, because I took a random Roberts gig playing lead guitar for somebody last Sunday, and I came in on this solo so confident. In the wrong key. And then Brett Resnick, I don't know if y'all know him, the steel player Brett. It's great. He played with Casey Musgraves and played with Zach Toppin. And he just looks at me and just kind of laughs. And I was like, motherfucker.
Yeah,
I'm like,
but a lot of people in the crowd probably didn't even notice that shit. Like your band did for sure, but
somebody heard it.
I'm sure, like, yeah, in Nashville, because
So you're still probably right.
Here,
The pressure's not there, and you're not under the spotlight quite. But that's what that's what comedians choose.
Yeah.
Like they're ready for it, and they know. Well, Norm Macdonald would bomb on purpose.
I was about to say
he's my favorite
artist,
comedian,
maybe of all time.
I love Norm.
The only man who's died that I've never met that just I think it was like someone told me my grandmother died. You know what I mean? I was so fucking sad when Norm died.
Yeah, man.
That man, to me, is the shining beacon of what art is. Whatever you're doing,
I kind of think so too.
That's what
I
art
think
is.
he nailed it.
Just do it. Just do the thing.
To Norm.
Just do the thing and do it to the best of your abilities forever, and then die. Like that man is a
never told anybody he was sick.
No.
That's a whole podcast in itself.
Another world right there. Another Canadian gone too soon. But that man is, to me, I adore him, and I'm just so fucking sad. Brian knows a long time ago. You know his moth joke that he did?
Yeah. Let's not start this.
No, well, I'm not going to tell the fucking joke, but for a long time, for years. Yeah, exactly. We'd go to parties.
Y'all go watch that. It's on Conan O'Brien.
I'm sure it was funny when Norm said it, but Casey used to tell everybody this joke in college, and I would have to listen to him tell this fucking joke. You can't tell
Norm jokes.
And he would...
unless you're Norm.
No, but I would do it for like 20 minutes. I would do it for so fucking long.
It's just...
Do you like Jeff Tweedy?
No, not really my thing. Not really my thing personally.
For some reason, I feel like you and Wilco would get along.
Interesting. Don't dislike it. Just never been like my thing. I've seen them live a couple times. I've seen them live.
Really?
I never got into them. I know my dad's a huge fan of them.
Yeah,
I like Jeff, and I feel like that there's some similarities with.
Yeah, maybe I need to.
Well, you know, Norm loved Billy Joe Shaver.
Yes.
Brilliant. But I love Norm, and I love that attitude. That's like some kind of punk rock attitude of like trying to tell a Norm joke even longer than he told it. And it's not going to work. Is that beer?
You need anything?
I'll take a beer.
Water?
Yeah, sure.
Beer?
Yeah.
You want a PBR or a Stone?
PBR.
Yeah, there is something just so punk rock about that approach that I love.
It's never going to work.
No,
he barely made it work, but
but like everything we've been talking about, it's this recognition that it's the journey.
Yeah,
that it's not that. I think,
but he was so good at it, and that's what's so cool too, is that he got the art form to the degree that he would stretch it, because not all music is supposed to be enjoyed if you can make it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. When you get through the journey of it.
Absolutely.
Because pop music is totally like, I think of music in cheese, like cheese.
Yeah.
To the sense of like Velveeta, American, craft American. Man, anybody will eat that. You can put that in anything. It's going to go down. That is your pop, like basic pop music. And then maybe somebody is like, I'm going to eat cheddar or Swiss. I'm going to advance my tastes a little bit. And then you're kind of getting into some more, maybe rock or Americana a little bit. And as you continue to develop it, then you're like, ooh, brie. Ooh, I'll try some brie out. Or then you're getting into some like real stinky cheese.
Cool. That's my kind of thing right there.
And the stinkier it gets, that's when you're getting into like country and western swing and jazz and blues. Mm-hmm. That's some stinky stuff that when you're first consuming it, you're like, this stinks. But then later you're like, this is all that's going to do it for me. I got to have this. I can't have none of that bullshit cheese no more. You got to give me the good cheese, like that sour. Man.
Yeah, we've had some incredible stand-up comics in the short life of stand-up comedy, but to me, nobody has made me laugh harder on this earth in that art form than Norm Macdonald.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I love Norm.
And I just think that there's something to that. Hitler's Dog, that special is it is unbelievably well put together.
I haven't really watched enough of his stuff. I should probably go down that rabbit hole.
He's my favorite.
Yeah.
Hitler's Dog, Trickery, and Other Gossip, I think is the Full time.
Just
trickery. It's just the greatest thing to come in after that. And
Yeah. And I love that. I love that whatever world you're working in, there are people out there like Norm and like David Lynch and like others. Like,
I think they lived in the same plane.
yeah,
like
exactly.
the place
There are
that
those
they were
people
at.
who just do
Or
the
Garth
thing
Hudson.
for the or like Garth, who do the thing for the sake of doing the thing. And if you can stay in that world, you'll kind of be all right.
I think anyone who gets renown as the greatest is doing it for that reason, you know? Like anyone who is doing it for more superficial reasons, they're never going to rise to the top.
Yeah.
They'll burn out before they get there, you know?
And it's that there's something about it too. I love George Carlin. George Carlin meant a lot to me as a kid.
George Carlin.
George really truly meant a lot to me as a young person, and still does. I mean, if I had to name the handful of people who have really made me who I am, he's on there for me.
For sure.
And he same thing. I mean, I think you find the other thing that we don't really talk enough about is I think you find who you are. Oftentimes when this conversation is had, we talk about it in terms of you being able to express yourself through your medium, and that being the goal, which in my head is backwards. It's the goal is you're using the medium to find who you are, and you're never going to get there. You're never going to be able to find who you are as a person. That's always going to be an elusive thing. But that process, again, whatever that process is, whether it's stand-up comedy or whether it's
Maybe
music,
we're all
whatever.
one.
Exactly. And to me it's a tool to get towards that thing. And going into that you're never going to get to that thing. It's just not there. But the fun of it is that process. The fun of it is trying to find who you are through that thing. And the greatest artists that I can think of, whether it's George Carlin or Norm Macdonald or Garth Hudson or David Lynch or whomever, they all recognize that. They recognize that this is the tool I'm using to try and find who I am.
Are y'all horror movie fans?
Oh,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
I love horror movies.
Yes.
They're my favorite thing in the
Me
world.
too, man. I love them. George Romero.
I feel bad because
Yes,
Alexa
yes.
does not like horror movies, but
No.
I make her watch so many.
Oh, man.
Traumatize her. with
I was
all
already
this.
messed up. I thought the monkey was out, and I was going to go watch it last night. And I was so
I
bummed
haven't
out.
heard of that one.
It's a
Yeah,
Stephen King
it's-
short story
Oh, okay.
that what's his name? Osgood Perkins that made what's the Nick Cage movie that just came out not long ago?
Mandy, or not Mandy, sorry.
The horror movie. I know what you're.
Yeah.
It was really good. I saw it in theaters.
But it's the same director.
Yeah. Okay.
James Wan produced it. Stephen
need to
King
check
wrote
that
it.
out.
It's not going to come out till February 20th, but The Monkey.
There you go.
I love horror movies.
But I do too. And George Romero, we were talking about other artists that I love. And, you know, he made Night of the Living Dead in 66, but he was working for Mr. Rogers at the time and used all of that production equipment to make Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, wow.
And Mr. Rogers was in full support of it. So
Yeah.
how awesome a thing that Mr. Rogers is so amazing
Exactly.
and so, wholesome, but he's also understanding that this is art too, and I need to support this.
Yeah.
So gives George Romero the reins of make undead people that are eating other people. That'll be a good movie.
But it's also that kind of film.
It's important. Yeah.
Penn Jillette said this one time, and it very much rings true to me. Still does. He said that making an intellectual, a monster movie with intellectual content is everything. Whether it's Night of the Living Dead, the first Godzilla film was like this too. I think Ishiro Honda made something beautiful.
Look at Hansel
with
and Gretel and
Yeah.
all the folklore and stuff. It's all
But
horror.
It's this idea of creating something that can seem flippant or seem absurd or seem over the top, but that there's that person is saying something there. And the reason Night of the Living Dead is a great movie is not because it's a silly zombie movie. There's plenty of those, but because
The social
there's a lot
critique.
going on. There's a lot going on in that movie. And the same thing with Godzilla. I mean, the first Godzilla movie is a phenomenal movie. We think of the subsequent 70 years of other Godzilla films that have come out, and a lot of which are entertaining for other reasons. But
what's worse, Godzilla or the bomb?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly it. I mean, but really that film is a meditation on a lot of very deep things.
And so I think country music's very similar. Like, I think a lot of country fans, true country fans, consider it the greatest country song of all time, He Stopped Loving Her Today. And it's so dark and nearly horrific.
Yeah.
Like, if that's your life, man, that's a sad life. But country fans love it. And George sang it so good, you know. And it just starts off, you know, so honest. The first lines are, he said, I'll love you till I die. That's what the whole song's about. Like, that's pretty awesome, you know.
And I think there are really two forms. I think that I have this theory that all of life is really storytelling. It's the way that I think human beings interface with the world. I think the only way we go through the world is through stories and understanding stories. And I think that at the end of the day, there are really two stories. There are stories of drama and there are stories of comedy, and they're one and the same. Yeah. It's just how we look at it. And there are, I think, songs oftentimes as a form, it can be very scary for people to look at true drama in songs. We can. It's
hard to mask it.
It is, and there are certain songs, because true drama is like Ballad of Hollis Brown. True songs are, that entire song is him and his family are starving, and he kills all of them, and then he kills himself in the end. That is drama.
It's almost more than you can handle.
It is. Drama.
So country makes it a little more digestible, even if it's really as dark.
Yeah.
It makes light of certain things like that. Like Chris Weisbecker, who I know y'all had on the podcast. Man, me and him talk all the time. And he honestly texted me yesterday. He was like, can you make a playlist of country songs that are saying the opposite of what they're really saying?
Yeah.
And, you know, like He Stopped Loving Her Today, you know. Or not, He Stopped Loving Her Today. It's the other George Jones song. She Thinks I Still Care. Because when he originally sang it, it was because she thinks I still care, 'cause I do, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Or even my own song, like I Don't Need You. The whole premise of the song is I do. So
yeah.
It's like, how do you make the tough things, you know, how do you flip that around and make it funny or make it digestible? And how do you like hit the hardest subjects but still make it easy to absorb? That's like a true country song, you know.
It's weird. I find, you know, we're talking about like dramatic or darker themes versus like more comedic type things. For whatever reason, for me, like comedy and music like don't mix.
Oh, see, which is funny because that's my whole world. Like that's what I love doing. Yeah.
I guess there can be a way, but like,
well,
I think for me personally, like the darker themes and like more real shit and like depressing things, to me, it always just sounds better. Like it fits music more for me.
It's the flip side of the same coin. So like for me, Mose knows this obviously, but for me, I write in character. So my whole world is I want to build a character with the song, and all of us have drama we deal with in life, and we have comedic tendencies in life. And so when I'm presenting something, I think it's, yes, oftentimes in music, the true drama of life, the true darkness of life is kind of set to the side. But generally, I think we tend to work with that half of the coin. That tends to be what music works with. Now, there are certain people that I love, whether it's Warren Zevon, Randy Newman, Shel Silverstein, the list could go on, of people who can be more comedic in their songs. Dylan does this a lot. There are people who can be funny and can say, and can look at the other side of the coin in music. But it's a lot harder to do, I think. And to me, it's like I would rather try.
What's a song that's heavy to you that's good? Or that addresses darkness that is done in a good way?
A lot
Can you
of
think of
things.
one?
Like I don't know if I can think of a specific one. I just know a lot of times when like there's music that's trying too hard to be funny or comedic, like it bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
it's
see, I
almost
find-
like comedy and like music.
So I don't know if
for
it
me.
needs to
There's
be
like a
comedy.
separation there where it's like
This is-
I can appreciate comedy
Oh, no,
and I love music.
I think what
but
we're
for
talking
me, they're
about,
two separate things,
I think what
and
we're
I don't
talking
like
about
them
is
mixed.
this. I'm not doing stand up with my music. I'll use an example.
Yeah.
One of my songs is called "Letting Go of Mom," which isn't. I haven't recorded it. I play it every once in a while, but and it's about these two grown adults bickering about whether or not to pull the plug on their dying mother.
That doesn't sound
Okay.
that funny.
No, but that's my point. I'll use this as an example. The scenario, this to me is what comedy is, and this is why I think the greats of comedy understand this. That's what comedy is. Comedy is recognizing the absurdity of an incredibly dark situation. Now, none of that song is played for a laugh. None of it. It's played completely straight.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the comedy in it. And there's no right or wrong way to respond to something so dark like that.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's what the meditation that I get on it is exactly that. The meditation is, it's again, two sides of the same coin. It's how are you viewing the situation? I mean, I start and close the song with the mother's perspective, who doesn't really even understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's the only way to get into that, which is you have these two people who love this person dearly, who are essentially bickering over whether or not they're going to kill her. And it's all about you as an audience, how you perceive that. Are you perceiving this in a comedic way where this is the most absurd song you've ever heard in your life? Or is this incredibly dark and incredibly dramatic and it's uncomfortable? Either way, it's uncomfortable, but that's where I think the human experience really lies, is on that knife edge of how do we balance this?
The same for me was that tune I played, That's Love.
Was that the last one you did?
The last one I did.
I really like
Which
that.
to me was like a very, there's a dichotomy there that's like, that's love. It's good and it's bad. It's happy and sad. You can give it or you can take it all away. But that's love at the end of the day.
It's also just life.
It's really what it is. And is there life without love or is there love without life? And that was kind of my thoughts on I wanted to write a love song that didn't seem super cheesy and happy. And that was kind of the beginning of me getting into that tune I kind of think that's the irony that I like in country music, is that some of it is really sad and really dark, but it's told in a way that you can listen to it. It's not so much so that you can't handle it. And sometimes that's like the difference between folk songs and country songs to me, because sometimes folk songs bring me down too much and I don't want to hear them again. But country songs, I can like Bartender Blues. It's a bummer of a song to hit alcoholism and being a bartender and losing love for so much at that point. But still, there's something that's keeping you hanging on.
Yeah.
It's like, if I need to, I'll just leave here. And
Country music can be one of the strengths of it. One of the things I think is truly remarkable about it is that it can be more palatable. And not palatable in the sense that you're diluting the thing, but it's designed to be more palatable.
A truly beautiful, incredibly dark country song is Willie Nelson's I Just Can't Let You Say Goodbye. Mm-hmm. You know that one?
Yeah.
And there's a version on the Teatro record that just, the whole song is of I don't know if it doesn't say if it's a man or a woman, but someone seeing their lover that's no longer with them, and they hadn't planned on it, and they lose all self-control and strangle them to death. And that it talks about that throughout each verse of the song. And still, I love listening to it and love hearing the beauty of the darkness of that tune. And I don't even have a way of explaining it. Like, I kind of feel like that cats like Willie Nelson and Paul Simon get on a subconscious level that's beyond explanation or something that we've found language for. But they're putting this there. And and from the get-go, it's like, I hadn't planned on seeing you. I was afraid of what I'd do. That's the opening of the song. And I just can't let you say goodbye.
There's a reason we love murder ballads, you know. They stick
We
with
always
you.
have too.
Yeah, they have.
And you try to think about it, it's like that's morbid. Why do we like these? Why do
no,
we
it's
keep
the-
playing
It's
these
the
songs?
same
But-
reason that we like horror movies.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's high
like
drama.
It's this thing. It's this heavy thing that you never experience in your real life. So you're
safe.
You're
in a safe place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you get to explore that thing
You
without
experience
actually.
it in your own life, but you enjoy it when it's someone else that it's happening to.
Yeah, well, it's something you get to explore without, obviously experiencing it yourself is horrible, and you don't want to do that. So you
Yeah.
get to explore it in this sort of fictional world.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's why I love horror
And I
movies.
love them.
It's
I
like
love horror
these
movies.
crazy situations, these horrible things happening. You get to experience that world with. Obviously, you don't want to be there in real life, but you get to.
So do you have a favorite horror movie?
Oh, dude, I don't know. That's man, I've had a lot of good ones recently I've watched.
Or a favorite? Or just,
That's a
general?
hard one.
I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. If I had one director who's my favorite, not the best director of all time, but my favorite director would probably be John Carpenter.
Yeah.
So I love.
I'm bad
I
at
love the thing. Yeah.
I'm bad at like remembering names of shit, but I could send you like a list of stuff. I've seen so many good ones recently. But
Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
Carpenter. That's
Prince of Darkness is a
An
great
unknown
movie.
one that I love.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna be honest.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm gonna be honest. Like, I like a lot of. There's a lot of older horror movies that I feel like just do not hold up well. Like, I feel like it was the last podcast. Maybe you talked about like Alfred Hitchcock for a while. There's a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies that are just ridiculous now.
I think if you're gonna have the two greatest directors of all time, it's a toss up. But it depends on what side of the bed you're getting up on. But Hitchcock is. It's either Kurosawa or Hitchcock, and Hitchcock is
Kurosawa.
yeah. It's either Kurosawa or Hitchcock. I mean, there's great,
But I feel
phenomenal
yeah.
directors. I
I
mean,
don't know. I feel like as far as horror goes, a lot of those older movies do not hold up. Like,
I think
they just
Hitchcock's
seem a
special
little
because
ridiculous.
he kind of put horror on the map.
Maybe for
Like
sure.
Psycho,
Yeah, you gotta respect.
Nobody
the,
ever made a great horror film before Psycho.
But
And
if you watch Psycho now, you're like, this shit's ridiculous.
Psycho's
It's
not
not
scary
scary
at
at all.
Shut
it's
your
the same way as
fucking mouth,
listening
Brian.
as
Shut your
Kind of
mouth.
Blues.
Shut your mouth.
Like
Yeah,
Kind
that's
of Blues
true.
been
No,
ripped
I
off so
get
much
for the time
like,
that it was probably horrifying, but if you watch it now, it's silly
it's
as
so
fuck.
good. No, shut up.
It's silly as fuck.
It is so fucking good. That movie is.
and
so
nobody
fucking
ever
good.
killed
sure
off
for
a
the
lead that quickly.
Yeah,
I'm sure for the time it was groundbreaking, but like,
so fucking good. No, Brian doesn't know what he's talking. No, Onibaba is up there. There's some great horror. There's some great horror
man,
movies.
we've watched so many good ones recently.
I even like the
wish I
bad
could
ones
remember
though.
them.
Like
Oh,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
all but the first Terrifier film in theaters.
There you go.
So
And experiencing that with a group of people is a wild because
Oh, Wes
Hannah's not going to
Craven.
go
So
to
for
those
me, there's
tomatoes.
two categories of horror movies, and they're both equally good. There's the good horror movies, which are
Good movies that are
great,
horror movies. Yeah.
and then there's terrible horror movies, which are just as great in their
Yes,
own way.
yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
I sometimes like things like horror is the best genre for movies that are so bad that they're good.
Have you guys seen? This. I would probably call this a horror movie. Have you guys seen Bone Tomahawk?
Yeah, it's
Oh
great.
my god!
Kurt Russell.
I literally
That is one of my
that
favorite
one
movies
scene
of the
definitely
last-
makes it a horror
That's
film,
one of my
so.
favorite movies of the last 25 years.
That-
That movie is so fucking good.
I don't think there has ever been a scene in a movie that has made me wince harder than the scene that you know what I'm talking about.
That movie, so when the story goes, when everyone read that script, they were like, oh my God, we need to make this movie. Like every person that read that script was so on board to make that movie, they just couldn't get there fast enough, which I think that's a beautiful thing. You know, when
So have you all seen the first Terrifier film?
No, I haven't.
We watched, Alexa and I have watched all three, and I can deal with gore. Like I don't mind it. I'm not gonna lie though. Like we saw the most recent one in theaters. It
The
was too
opening
much.
scene,
It was too
yeah.
much. It
So-
was too gnarly, dude.
So I was on a
like,
tour I wasn't enjoying when I went and saw that, and I had to leave after the first 15 minutes. And that's the first time I've ever walked out on a movie.
Dude.
But I was not in a good mental state, and just seeing this was like, okay, I can't handle this. right now.
Terrifier?
Like,
You walked out in the first 15 minutes?
Yeah, after the opening scene, I was just like, this was too much.
It's a good thing you didn't stay for the whole movie because...
I went back and watched it again later. But for that weekend, my mental state was not ready to process this on such a big screen.
I like horror movies and I can deal with like murder and gore, but like, bro, that movie, the third one...
And I still respect
towards the end. I was like,
clown.
dude, I don't. Please just wrap it up. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, it was way too gnarly. Like, and speaking of Bone Tomahawk, like, there's
that one still sticks with you more.
But Bone Tomahawk though is a piece
except for
of
the
art.
first Terrifier.
Bone
There's
Tomahawk
something
is a
about that
piece of
first
art.
Bone Tomahawk was okay. So with a movie like Terrifier, like it's fucking disgusting, gnarly the whole time, right? So like. When something crazy happens, like you're kind of expecting it. Like this is that kind of movie. Whereas Bone Tomahawk,
it gets you out of nowhere,
dude. That movie, but the writing in that movie, everything about that movie is phenomenal.
The characters are great. It's such a western.
It's so
it's
phenomenal.
But that
Acting,
one
that will stick with you.
That one scene, just like it's like a normal horror movie until that one scene, and like I remember like. It was like the only movie where I was legitimately like offended, because it just comes out of nowhere. Like that, the rest of the movie is like a normal movie.
I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna watch Bone Tomahawk tonight. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, but
we'll talk Hannah into it. Like Hannah, there's a really nice western movie we need to watch.
Honestly, it is a really.
You kind of know from the get go though. The opening scene with David Arquette and who played the clown in the Rob Zombie movies.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know. Anyway.
Yeah, well, okay, we're gonna do a movie showing soon.
Anyway.
Do y'all know Ryan Elwell?
Oh. Okay.
So that's my horror movie buddy.
Really?
Me and him go watch all the horror movies
That's
together.
awesome.
Because Hannah will go watch a few with me, or if it's something that she's like, she wants to see the monkey. She's interested in that.
I'll DM you because I'm always looking for good horror movies to watch, and I feel like I go on the streaming services and I've like seen all the good ones. So I'm gonna let's share lists.
Yeah, well, we gotta get like a text stream going where we can throw in some good ones.
I need
I want
to
get
like
a projector and have like a horror movie night, and like
awesome.
y'all should add that to a podcast, and like
That would be
we'll have
fun.
a conversation about each horror
that'll
film
be
afterwards.
the behind the paywall content.
Get somebody that's new that doesn't quite understand and get them in there for the shock value, and then let everybody else kind of talk about it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, Mose, I gotta say, this was an absolute fucking ball. I'm so glad you did this, man. You're one of the people that we've been really, really hoping to get in here. So when this worked out, I was just so fucking happy.
I hope it worked out. I feel like I just talked a lot.
No, it was fucking great.
This was awesome, man. Honestly, one of my favorite ones yet.
Yeah,
So.
Right on.
I'm real glad you were in here for this. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah,
that
dude.
was fun.
Hell yeah. Dude, I'm really excited for that new record.
So we're all done.
I'm really excited for that new record. Woo. Those are some heavy hitters on that thing, man.
Thanks,
That's gonna
man.
be a killer.
Yeah, it's fun. I hope it works out. You never know. But
I'm sure. I'm sure.